Before Rome, there were the Etruscans. They were the most powerful people in Italy and even ruled over Rome itself. Then they vanished. What happened and where did they go? A lot of what we know of Etruscan civilization comes from Greek and Roman historians, the latter whom were often anything but sympathetic to this one superior civilization, whom was the first who could read and write on the Italian peninsula and actually gave birth to the Roman alphabet. Since these Roman history books are subjective plus in any way open to interpretation, and the oldest Etruscan settlements and towns have not withstood the test of time, having either been reclaimed by nature or built over by later peoples, there are often competing theories as to the origins and true nature of Etruscan civilization. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote that they came from Lydia in modern-day Greece and Anatolia. After a period of hardship, their king split the people into two groups. One would remain, whilst the other sailed for greener pastures under the leadership of the king's son. This group became the Etruscans, whose first traces of in Italy date back to the year 1200 BC. Etruscans were indeed heavily influenced by Greek culture, and there's evidence in their artwork which suggests that they saw themselves as descendants of the Trojans. DNA research published in 2007 have since confirmed this theory to be at least partially true. There may have been a mass arrival of people from Lydia. Other studies, however, have shown that a theory which purports that Etruscan civilization arose locally may also be valid. These studies have shown that Etruscan culture is much older than the out of Anatolia theory would suggest. Regardless of where their true origins lie, there are many things scholars agree upon. The Etruscans were fond of building hilltop cities situated in naturally easily defensible positions, like the town of Civita di Bagnoregio, which dates back to 500 BC. Tuscany, the Italian city-state which today roughly corresponds with the Etruscan heartland, have several of these incredible towns still standing today. These towns, however, tell us little about the Etruscan way of life, seeing as they've changed considerably over the years. Luckily, the Etruscans were fond of burying their dead in sealed tombs with incredible frescoes depicting scenes from everyday life. They even depict some of the sordid details men normally don't divulge, including sexual acts, some even with the same sex. Keep in mind though that these frescoes are in tombs and were thus likely never meant to be seen by the likes of modern men, who then goes on to post it on YouTube. Their tombs were exact copies of what their houses looked like, with full-sized copies of tools and other belongings carved out from stone. From this, we know a lot about the Etruscans, but naturally, the sexual frescoes have stolen the headlines. Even their contemporaries, the Greeks and Romans, wrote about Etruscan sexuality. Group sex was the norm, according to Theopompus, a Greek historian, so much so that Etruscan men could never be certain they were the father of a child. Tombs found in Tarquinia seems to confirm this, but it's hard to know for sure, as ancient Greek and Roman historians may have perpetuated or even created such myths to elevate their people above the Etruscans, whom in many ways, at least viewed from the 21st century, were more like us than contemporary competing ancient civilizations. Etruscan women, for example, could own property and were free. They enjoyed privileges Greek and Roman women could only dream of. Another Greek historian also relayed, with shock and horror, how Etruscan women could associate and feast with men other than their husbands. At banquets, they would also appear fully naked in public and would work out alongside men. They were also heavily into alcohol, according to the same source, but they could also read and write in an age where the vast majority of the world could not. Frescoes of banquets from the 5th century confirms a lot of this, but it is of course impossible to know this with 100% accuracy. At the pinnacle of their power, the Etruscans were organized politically as a federation called the Etruscan League by modern historians, consisting of 12 larger towns whom were possibly equals, as there appears to have been no capital. Once a year, these towns would send delegates to discuss matters of political and religious significance at a place archaeologists today believe was Orvieto. The Etruscan civilization really doesn't resemble anything akin to a modern centralized state. Instead, they likely remained a loose collection of independent towns with a shared language, culture, commerce, and security concerns. Hence, at this annual meeting, apart from discussions, sacrifices were made in order to please the gods. Etruscans appear to have been fabulously wealthy for their time. Their main product was ironworks, as they were skilled metal workers. They made tools, armor, and weapons, which was shipped across the Mediterranean. We know this because Etruscan armor has been found in archaeological digs all over Europe's largest inland sea. Their favorite form of payment, and hence biggest import, was Greek pottery. The Etruscans were also famed sailors, not relying on others to freight their cargo, but instead peddling their own goods to faraway lands alongside the Phoenicians and Greeks. Often they even acted as middlemen, taking goods from those advanced civilizations to the underdeveloped west and north of Europe. So here we have a thriving civilization inferior to none of their immediate neighbors at the time. Rome's sewer system, for example, was built under Etruscan rule, and the Etruscans were the sophisticated people vis-a-vis the Romans. For over 100 years, Etruscan kings even ruled Rome. Yet within 2 centuries, the Etruscans were completely absorbed by Rome. So what happened? In the year 510, this abruptly came to an end when the son of an Etruscan king, Superbus, what a name, who hailed from the Etruscan city of Tarquinia but ruled Rome at the time, forced himself upon and violated a noblewoman. This galvanized the Romans to revolt and expel their Etruscan overlords. This was how the Roman Republic got started, as the nobles vowed to never again let Rome be ruled by one king. Superbus, again what a name, did not give in without a fight. He allied himself with another Etruscan king, and together they launched an attack on Rome in the year 510 BC. Their campaign kicked off with many initial victories before ending in a crushing defeat at the banks of the Tiber River. Over the next 150 years, Rome went on the offensive and conquered one Etruscan town after another. By 264 BC, all Etruscan cities were either destroyed or incorporated into the Roman Empire. Soon the Etruscan way of life was completely subsumed by that of Rome, and there's not even a single trace of their language in archaeology after 100 BC. In hindsight, maybe teaching the Romans how to read and write hadn't been such a good idea after all. For the rest of us though, especially those of us watching this film in Western Europe, it's worked out pretty well, seeing as it's the Romans who in turn gave us our alphabet, which we still use today.